everyone, it's Shripriya, just your regular brown girl in Japan, and I've been getting a lot of questions about how to learn Japanese for MEXT and do you need Japanese when you come to Japan, and I just have the right person for it here. Swastika, say hi.
Hi.
Can you please introduce yourself to our audience?
Sure, I'd be happy to. So I've been in Japan for about 5 years and I did my master's at Tohoku University. I also started my PhD, but I decided to take a gap semester, so I'm working full-time now. I started my job last October, and I mainly work in sustainable tourism in Fukushima. So we are trying to understand how to revitalize communities post-disaster, post a 2011 earthquake that happened. And yeah, I really like chai, poetry.
So the major question that we want to tackle today is like, how much Japanese do you know? Are you fluent? And then how can somebody learn when they come to Japan?
So I would consider myself fluent in Japanese because I have the N1 level of the Japanese language proficiency test, even though I do believe that these are not definitive markers of your ability.
First of all, how long did it take you to be proficient in Japanese?
So I started learning September 2017 to be exact, and I took my N1 examination December 2019.
Oh, just 2 years?
Yes.
Oh, that's pretty impressive. I've been here for 2.5 years and I don't think I can cross even N3. So like you said, you came through MEXT scholarship and the MEXT embassy examination requires some level of Japanese. They have some questions in their entrance examination, and a lot of people reached out to me asking if they really need Japanese to clear that exam.
You don't really have to know Japanese, but during my time I had to take a Japanese language test, but I was told that if you don't know anything, just leave the paper blank.
What are some of the resources that you could suggest them?
I love these 2 textbooks called Genki. So there's Genki 1 and there's Genki 2, and both of them also come with a set of their own workbooks. I think that I used those back in Fukuoka Women's University, and I feel like they're great resources. The first textbook I did in class, so it was a very, teacher-student kind of a setting, but I did the second textbook entirely on my own. I feel like when it comes to language learning, motivation plays a really, really big role, so I was really motivated to learn, and that helped me as well. But just as a resource, I think it's pretty concise. It's really funny. I have this distinct memory where I remember my teacher was telling me to repeat McDonald's in Japanese. You write it in katakana and it becomes McDonaldo. I'm coming from India and obviously I'm saying McDonald's. In the Genki textbook, I think there was McDonaldo and Mosubaga. So I remember just my teacher telling me to repeat each word 10 times.
If they really want to be fluent, for instance, like you are N1. So if somebody wants to achieve this level of proficiency, what do you think is the way to move forward?
I think it's really important to try to trace your motivations to figure out why you want to get good at this thing, and then list them up and then try to figure out a comprehensive learning plan. I do think it's really important to be in classroom settings. It could also be online, but I think it helps a lot to have a teacher or a reliable guide. Don't set your goal. If you want to get really proficient, be ambitious. Don't set your goals too low. Just be like, I want to be as good as a native speaker, because you can be using techniques like shadowing, for instance, where you just listen to somebody who's speaking in a standard Japanese accent and try to repeat that thing 10 times. It's going to help you a lot to get closer to actual native pronunciation.
And I wanted to know how much time per day did you actually give to actively learning Japanese?
I don't think I ever measured. Like when I was back in Fukuoka Women's University, we had these optional classes that we could take 3 to 4 days a week for 2 to 3 hours with breaks in them, breaks in between. So I feel like it was like, let's say 2-3 hours-ish a day for 3 days. That would be 9 hours a week. But of course, I also used to go back and try to talk with my roommates, and also sometimes try writing my diary in Japanese and stuff like that. So I think overall, I was definitely spending at least 1 to 2 hours on language learning every day.
Yeah.
So I think it's really important to make sure you do that. Not in terms of time, but at least in terms of doing it every day. I feel
consistency.
Consistency is what really counts. Like you get the Duolingo app and it's going to send you like a notification 5 times a day. I know how annoying it gets, but I think it's great. I think it's going to
do you think Duolingo is a good resource to learning Japanese?
I haven't really used Duolingo for learning Japanese. My mom has used it for a bit. My granny uses it for English, and my nanny, she is enjoying it. So I think it's pretty nice as a resource for Japanese specifically. I did use something called Wanikani, which I'd recommend. It helps you understand the kanji radicals better.
So what is a realistic timeline? I know 1 to 2 hours can be quite hectic for somebody who's doing like full-time job or is coming as a master's or a PhD student in Japan. So how much time do you think would take them to be fluent in Japanese?
I was lucky because my major is linguistics, right? So I feel like I had to interact with the language anyways. But I feel like if you're studying something that's completely different, I would definitely recommend joining some sort of a language learning circle and having language learning buddies who can check up on you, right? And I think it would be a good idea to give yourself 2 years to try to get fluent and try to take Japanese classes wherever you can. Because I think most universities in Japan, at least if you come in as a MEXT scholar, they ask you if you want to learn Japanese and they give you a 6-month time period, I think, to do an intensive language learning course.
So apart from classes, which are obviously a great resource, what are some other things that we can do, like kind of include them in our daily life to be consistent with Japanese and be fluent over a longer period of time?
I would recommend this show called Kodoku no Gurume. It's an old show, it's not an anime, it's just like the show about this salaryman who loves food, and it's about how he finds these new shops in different cities and goes there and enjoys his food just by himself. Yeah, I feel like a show like that would be nice. Repeat some of the words to yourself. He uses like very standard Japanese mostly. You could also listen to podcasts potentially.
Do you have any good recommendations for podcasts?
I used to listen to NHK News every single day. It's not a podcast, but kind of. Like you can access it through most podcast platforms, I think.
I wanted to know if people like me who do not have any Japanese friends, how can you be fluent? Like how do you, the ultimate goal is to be able to talk in Japanese and sound like a native.
Right.
But if you don't have somebody to talk to, then how can we practice that?
So shadowing is great, like I mentioned, watch Kodoku no Gurume. So maybe you can't talk to him, but you can like still pick up on his Japanese. The monologues is also a great idea. Again, it may be a bit difficult for you to figure out where you're going wrong, but you will over time realize. And you can also, even if you don't have a Japanese friend, I'm sure when you go to class, you can share it with people who are taking the class with you or your teacher.
And lastly, probably an anti-climatic question, but is it okay for somebody to come to Japan and not learn Japanese?
Yeah, I think it's completely okay. Like, I used to think personally that it's not. And I was really consumed by this idea that if you're staying in Japan, you must make an effort to learn Japanese. Like, you owe it to Japan to learn Japanese and to, you know, try to at least be able to get around society or day-to-day tasks in Japanese. But then I remember meeting this professor who's been in Japan for 30 years. He's American. And I think he only has an N5 or an N4. Like I said, 30 years, right? And I was just like, wow.
Yeah.
Like, how do you manage?
Yeah.
Like, I have a great life. Like, he has a great life. He has a really pretty apartment. And it's fine. Like, for him, he doesn't have that motivation. It's not like he doesn't have Japanese friends. He still has. In fact, he has some really, really good Japanese friends. They still manage to communicate. And sometimes you just choose to meet the person halfway, right? So that's when I feel like it's not, like, everything isn't about language, right? You could also be speaking language like Japanese perfectly, and it could still be a little difficult to figure out like relationships and stuff, right? So I think it's completely fine. Like, if you want to stay in Japan, you don't want to speak Japanese, it's fine. Would I recommend it? 500%, because if I haven't made it clear, I'm in love with Japanese. Like, if I could, I would want to teach everybody Japanese. Like, the language just gives me so much joy. It really fills my whole heart.
Last question, if somebody's coming to Japan for the very first time and they want to get started with Japanese, what is that one piece of advice you would like to give to them?
Use Genki.
Okay.
Use that textbook. It's a really, really good textbook.
Thank you so much for coming to our channel.
Thank you.
And we'll hopefully make another video with you on how to learn kanji, because I still don't know how to learn kanji. And I'll see you guys next week, and please like, share and subscribe. Okay, bye bye.